How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. And in today's video, we of course have three topics to cover, starting out with the fact that everyone is making their own Steam machine. And even though it's being kind of presented as competition to Valve, it seems like this was the plan from the start. After that, let's talk about how Proton 11 is here. It's planting the seeds for ARM SteamOS, but in the meantime, people have gotten Steam on an original Nintendo Switch. And finally, we'll wrap up the video by talking about how it's yet another big week for brand new Steam Deck games, and there's some cool stuff to put on your wish list. I hope you're having a great week so far, playing a ton of video games. I wrapped up Ace Combat 4, excellent game. I'm going to move right on to 5. I have a ton of stuff going on Steam Deck, honestly. I want to play Replaced as well, but Pragmata is awesome. I'm using Steam Deck HQ's 30 FPS settings on Steam Deck, and then on my main PC, my SteamOS one, I just maxed it out, 4K, no upscaling, runs amazing. I'm using FSR4 anti-aliasing. It looks so good. I cannot recommend this game enough. Let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, please, and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. But let's get into the first news story here and talk about how everyone under the sun is seemingly deciding to build their own Steam machines. And while it's being presented as like competition to Valve and like a challenge for them, I think this was the plan from the start. So the first example we have is coming from the team at EmuDeck. I love these guys. I have EmuDeck on everything. I have it on my Steam Deck. I have it on my SteamOS PC. I have it on my Windows PC. I even have it on my AYN Odin 3, and the save syncing is awesome. I think it's a little bit finicky depending on what emulator you're using, but when it works, it's so cool. It works like Steam, and I think this team is doing great stuff, and they've kind of had this concept figured out for a little bit. They did a Kickstarter a few years ago for this thing called the Planix, and it was supposed to be like a SteamOS-ish emulation console where it would run their own fork of Linux. It would come with EmuDeck out of the box, and it just didn't resonate. It was before we even had the concept of the Steam machine figured out. So they went back to the drawing board, and they've come back essentially with the same thing, but it's a Steam machine. So it's got like a Ryzen 5 processor. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. It's got a 9060 XT. It's got a really cool case that looks like a better version of the Xbox Series S, and they're doing it in batches. So they're going to sell it for the cost of all the parts added up, depending on what they are at the time. So right now, with the way parts are, the first batch is $1,100. And I've seen a lot of people saying that this is extremely expensive, blah, blah, blah. For the parts you're getting, $1,100 for this thing does not seem all that bad. Like, I get that now that we have SteamOS, a lot of the normal gamers out there who play on console want console prices of $400 or $500. For a 9060 XT equipped PC, I mean, even before the RAM spike went up, this was not something you were going to get at that price. So I think there needs to be a readjustment period for a lot of these console exclusive gamers, because I've been playing on PC since like The Witcher 3 came out, and you were never building a decent PC for less than $1,000. So I think $1,100 is a little high, but also it's just exactly what you'd expect for these parts. Even without the RAM crisis, I'd see this as a $1,000 machine, as someone who built a 9070 XT rig before the whole RAM shortage started. And as far as the actual gameplay goes, they're getting 4K 60 with FSR enabled. I want to see one thing with a lot of these SteamOS devices. We'll talk about this with the second one as well. When you use SteamOS on a PC, it still thinks you're using a Steam Deck. So for games that have the ability to use FSR4, like Resident Evil 9 or Pragmata or Metal Gear Solid Delta, that was another one. Even though you're on a PC, it thinks you're on a Steam Deck, so you only get access to FSR3, and then you've got to use a later version of Proton GE and put in a launch command that's like FSR upgrade, and then you'll see FSR4 on the menu, but that's a little extra step you have to do. I want to see if any of these devices, because they're not necessarily using SteamOS, have to deal with that, but that's kind of here nor there at this point. I think this thing looks pretty good, and it honestly seems like a better realignment of what they should have done initially with this whole Planix thing, and I'm really curious how many of these things are going to sell. And the second example we've got is coming from a YouTuber named Zach Builds, who built essentially the Steam machine. It's a little bit bigger, and it has parts that pretty much line up with the Planix. Like, there's some differences here and there, and because of that, I mean, you tried out Cyberpunk, you tried out Arc Raiders at decent settings, got 4K 60 with upscaling enabled. And the way he positioned this video is like as a challenge to Valve to beat his price of $950. But if you watch the video, the way he got to $950 was mostly by, you know, going secondhand on a lot of these parts. So I don't think it's really a fair comparison, but if they can get to that price or lower, obviously, because they're not using as good of parts as this guy used, I think that would be awesome. Like, if they're getting getting to that level of price with the parts they're using, clearly something is wrong, because, you know, this thing equals out to around $1,000 or $1,100. So it's $1,100 of parts that he got down to $950. It looks awesome. And the way he did it isn't really attainable by a lot of people, I would say, because you have to 3D scan the parts. He custom designed the chassis. He 3D printed a lot of it himself. So like, that's a little bit out of the realm of possibility for a lot of people. I think myself included. Like, I have a resin 3D printer, so I don't think it's really equipped to do a lot of this stuff. But overall, I think he did a good job, and the performance he's getting out of this thing is awesome. But the bigger story here, I would say, is that it's really easier than ever to get your own SteamOS PC set up. I know when a lot of YouTubers do this, they call it a SteamOS PC or their own Steam machine, but then when push comes to shove, they either, like Playnix, design their own little fork of Linux, or they end up using Bazite. I'm doing it the real way. My SteamOS PC is using SteamOS. I got the main 3.9 version that allows drivers for the 9070 XT, and while again, I run into a few issues here and there, like FSR4 needing a launch command every time I boot up a new game that has FSR4 capability. Overall, it's been a great experience from top to bottom, and over the past few months for sure, Valve's been adding in tons of features that are specifically equipped for desktop machines. So I know people love to make it seem like Valve is locking this stuff down, but I don't think they want it locked down. I think just like with the Steam Deck, the Steam Machine is supposed to be a reference device to say, hey, if you are a PC manufacturer like Asus, like Lenovo, or whoever, and you've got a small form factor PC with decent parts, we're building a fork of Linux that's excellent and works with 8GB GPUs, and you don't even need crazy parts to get decent performance, and we're trying to support every game on Steam. So that's obviously working. But then the second level of it is if you already have parts laying around, like you upgraded your PC, did an entirely new build, you've got an all AMD laptop, you've got an all AMD older PC, you could probably get more life out of it by just installing SteamOS. And with this new Steam Link technology that they're building, I mean, you could even use it as a streaming machine in your house from your higher end PC, stream to a different room, and then bam, you've got a whole new setup that's using your brand new parts. And they've just given everyone the freedom and flexibility to just play games on any device they have, which I think is awesome. And just to deck ride Valve a little bit, there are extra features with the Steam Machine that these other devices haven't really figured out, as far as I'm aware, like being able to turn on the thing with Bluetooth controllers. I mean, that is going to be a big deal as someone who has a SteamOS PC. I have that Logitech wireless keyboard that everyone has with the trackpad on the right side and then the mushy keys that doesn't really work all that well. Like, you definitely couldn't use it for gaming. I basically have to keep it under my TV in front of my entertainment center, because the way I turn on my PC is by hitting the right arrow key, because turning on my Bluetooth controller doesn't really turn the thing on. Of course, there's also the incredibly tiny form factor. There's the actual specific updates for this hardware you're going to get from Valve. So like, there are reasons to buy the Steam Machine instead of building your own. But if you're looking at the Steam Machine and you have the skills and the knowledge and the know-how to do this stuff yourself, I like that Valve's just saying, go ahead and do it. They're not stopping you. And that's what kind of just makes the whole Steam platform a lot better than what you get out of consoles if you're not that kind of person who just wants plug and play compatibility. But even from that standpoint, I think they're doing a good job with that front as well. So yeah, they've kind of created a situation where no matter what type of PC gamer you are, you've got options, and that's about to open up even more, which brings us into the second news story, which is Proton 11 is in beta. And the interesting thing about it, beyond the fact that it adds compatibility for a lot of older games, is that it finally ships ARM support. So people are able to get Ubuntu up and running on the Nintendo Switch and install Steam. Now, every news story is like making it seem like you can play Steam games on the Switch. That's not what's happening at all. They got Steam up and running, but like, you can't launch games, you can't actually play anything. I'm pretty sure you can't even download stuff. But where this comes in super clutch is for people with Android devices who are already playing Steam games, like, you know, the Retron Pocket 5, I think is what it's called, the AYN Thor, the AYN Odin. If you've got those devices, every upgrade they make to SteamOS for the Steam frame just basically helps you out. So when you get things like Proton 11, it just makes that whole future you're living in right now, where you're playing actual Steam games on these Android handhelds, that much easier. Now I have the AYN Odin 3. I'm just not really sold on the idea of an ARM Steam Deck just yet. Like, every YouTube video, obviously, because you have to make it the most clickable possible, is like, this is the Steam Deck Lite. it's nowhere near the Steam Deck Lite. Like the amount of games that work is impressive, but the amount of games that don't is annoying. Like I tried old stuff like Devil May Cry HD collection. I tried multiple configurations. It just doesn't work. I tried newer stuff. I was seeing stuttering. I was seeing textures not loading in, like Skyrim, for example. Your sword flashes in and out of reality. Like there's a reason that every YouTube video about these Android handhelds running Steam games uses the same 3 games like Elden Ring, The Witcher 3, Skyrim. It's basically the ones that have gotten the most support from the community. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking at this like I've got $500 or $600 burning a hole in my pocket, I could either buy the AYN Odin Max or, you know, a Steam Deck. I'm all day long going to recommend the Steam Deck because going back to the last news story, if you want plug and play, just open the thing up and play your games. You're not getting that out of these Android handhelds. And even from an emulation standpoint, it looks just as good, if not a little bit better on the Steam Deck because you get a bigger screen that's still OLED. Like playing Ace Combat 4, I booted it up on the AYN Odin. I thought it was fine. I booted it up on the Steam Deck. I played the entire game in a week. So like I'm still defaulting to the Steam Deck, but I think in the near future, that's when we're going to be talking about an ARM Steam Deck. So like while everyone's kind of looking at the Steam Deck 2, hoping it's going to be ARM, just based on the specs we're seeing and like the performance that we're seeing out of games on the Steam frame from people who have gotten their hands on it early, I think ARM is going to be saved for the Steam Deck 3 or a Steam Deck Lite that we'll maybe eventually get. And then the Steam Deck 2 will stick with regular old x86. It's kind of interesting for me to talk about it and think about it because I don't really have a horse in the race. I trust Valve to make the best device possible. So if they get an ARM Steam Deck to the point where it runs games as good, if not a little bit better, than the Steam Deck does already on x86, go with that. If x86 works better for them, go with that. I trust them to figure out what's the best way to do things. So like, I love the future of ARM where, you know, you get better battery life, you get a thinner device, you get a little bit better performance at lower load. So you get longer battery life. Like all of that is cool. And I think it could be a cool future, but if Valve determines that x86 is still better for them to use, I don't really care. Like that's just me. I care about the games and playing games at the end of the day. I'm not one of these people who loves the metagame of getting games up and running, closing them down and moving on to the next game. Like I get this stuff to play through games. I'm playing through games constantly. So whatever helps me do that, that's what I want. And it seems like regardless of what happens, whether it's x86 or ARM, that's exactly what I'm going to get. So yeah, getting Steam up and running on the Switch, things are moving in the right direction for you ARM evangelists. And for everyone else, I mean, SteamOS is just getting better at the end of the day. Like Proton 11 comes with a ton of fixes and performance patches for a lot of games. So either way, no matter what gamer you are, you're getting improvements, which I think is the real news story of all of this. And finally, that brings me to the next news story here. Speaking of the Steam Deck, we had a big week last week between Replaced, Pragmata, and Mouse PI for Hire. We've got another big week this week with a lot of new games to play or add to your wish list. So the first game on April 21st is Vampire Crawlers. I recommended this after the last Next Fest because the demo was amazing. If you've played Vampire Survivors, you know you're getting like Castlevania, but you're a little guy on the map, you auto fire, there's waves of enemies. The difference with Vampire Crawlers is that it's a first-person dungeon crawler that has a very similar formula where you could just sit down and magically it's 6 hours later. It runs immaculately on the Steam Deck. It's digital crack just like Vampire Survivors. If you want to try it out, the demo is still available and I highly recommend it, but the game is only $10 and again it comes out on April 21st and it runs flawlessly on the Steam Deck. So for $10, I feel like you just buy the game and see if you like it, give it 2 hours and then refund it if you don't. But just based on what I've already played, I think this game is going to be excellent. And I guess it's Vampire Week on the Steam Deck because you're getting a very classic style Castlevania, like pre-Symphony of the Night Castlevania through Saint Slayer Spear of Sacrilege. This one's coming from Lilymo Games, who's owned by the parent company of my friend Dustin's podcast Sacred Symbols. It is just classic Castlevania. So if you missed the era where it was more of like a difficult platformer with a cool little spooky story and really cool gothic pixel art architecture, this is definitely for you. I've played a little bit of it because I was able to get a key because I go on their podcast all the time and I'm friends with those guys, but I think it's really good regardless. I don't want to say this in a mean way, but it's not one of those games that's like a cheap thing thrown together to capitalize on a YouTube or podcast. It's like a real game from a real game developer that Colin invests in. So like, I don't feel bad recommending it. It also obviously runs great on the Steam Deck because it's a classic Castlevania game. I will say, after putting in some time, it is extremely difficult because it's a classic Castlevania style game. So if you're really into into those brutally difficult action platformers from back in the day, I feel like this one's going to be good for you. And honestly, based on the reviews, it seems like it's a real coming out party for the developer Lilymo Games. So yeah, I mean, you've got two great options. You've got Vampire Crawlers, which is first-person dungeon crawling version of Castlevania, and then you've got classic Castlevania through Saint Slayer, and even the new Castlevania, Belmont's Curse, looks like it's the Symphony of the Night style. So if you've been craving that classic action, they've got it for you with this game. And also, I'm going to double back and recommend Pragmata. The third-person shooting is amazing. It feels like Resident Evil, but with Vanquish elements, because unlike Resident Evil, where, you know, the reticle is a little bit shaky, there's a little bit of input lag to make it scarier, it's pinpoint accurate in this game. The combat is fast and fluid. The level design is Metroidvania inspired, so you can go back to earlier levels with new powers and get upgrades. There's a challenge mode where in the VR computer in your shelter, you can do challenge maps, and I have had so much fun with those. I don't know why they didn't include a shooting gallery in Resident Evil 9 because it's so good in 4. Like, if you want anything from any Capcom game, it's in here in some capacity, and it looks and runs amazing. It's another example of the Switch 2 port paying dividends for the Steam Deck, and as far as $70 games go, you'd be hard pressed to find one better than this that justifies that price. Capcom's generational year continues with games like Resident Evil, Monster Hunter Stories 3, Pragmata. I hope they bring it home with Onimusha, and I have no reason not to trust them. So no matter what kind of game you're looking for, just over the past 2 weeks, I mean, there's an example for everyone, and I love that because, again, we're 4 years into the Steam Deck's life cycle, and we're just getting game after game after game that look and run awesome on this hardware. So it's a celebration video, I guess. People are using SteamOS to build their own PCs. Proton 11 is here. We got great games on the Steam Deck. No reason to be upset. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.